last video, we took a brief look at the microcode writing process. And remember how I said I hadn't finished writing all the opcodes? Well, I've been busy. Since the last video, I've actually restructured the microprograms again, and as a result, completely rewrote the program assembler from scratch for the third time. So in this video, we'll be looking over the new assembly language for this computer. The truth is that by the time I finished with the hardware design for this computer over a year ago, I was getting pretty burnt out on the project. So back then, I made a very quick and dirty microcode assembler and program assembler. Both programs had virtually no error protection or debugging features, and were very inflexible to use or expand. Further, the assembly language relied on the opcode name itself to determine the addressing mode. This resulted in needing to memorize multiple variations of the same opcode name. This is what the assembly syntax looked like from before. The code here works, but it's annoying to read and work with. You'd have to remember that STARX stands for store a remote using X as the index, which means that it calculates the remote address with the X register. Not very clear. Fortunately, because this architecture is similar enough to the 6502, a 6502-like syntax is possible to adapt. So I rewrote the microcode assembler and the main program assembler, all to allow the computer's assembly to mimic that of the 6502 syntax. Now opcodes that used to look like this now look like this. If you've done programming for the 6502, you should feel right at home. The syntax between the two is virtually identical. That said, the computer is not compatible with the 6502. The memory organization and the internal functions operate completely differently. Some opcodes that the 6502 has are just outright missing for this computer, and my computer design has some opcodes that the 6502 doesn't. Plus, there's no zero page, and there's no relative branching, and there's no interrupts. So porting 6502 code to this computer would still take a significant amount of work, and some programs may not be possible to port at all. That said, I think this is a massive improvement over the old assembly syntax. Before we start diving into the program assembler, let's take a look at the new microprograms. To support the new addressing methods, the syntax of the microcode looks a bit different. Now opcodes are grouped together under a single mnemonic, with subentries for each addressing mode. This allows the microcode assembler to output an organized JSON file containing the metadata of each opcode in an organized structure. This metadata JSON file then plugs directly into the primary assembler, which the program assembler then uses to generate the machine code. The advantage of doing this is that if we want to make any changes to the microcode, such as adding functions or moving around their placement in memory, the program assembler itself doesn't need any reconfiguration. If we make changes to the microcode, we can use the microcode assembler to generate a new ROM image, a new JSON file, and a text file containing the automatically generated opcode documentation. We then upload the new microcode image to the computer and place the new JSON file in the same directory as the program assembler. Then the assembly programs that were already written can just be reassembled. The actual program assembler itself needs no changes, which is different from how the old assembler worked, where you had to manually update the built-in lookup tables. Now let's take a look at the program assembler. The program assembler is written as a single Python file. It takes in a single main assembly file to be processed, but inside of the assembly programs, programmers can include other assembly files. The actual assembly process would take a while to explain, but to boil it down, it takes in the text from the assembly file, sends it through multiple stages, where it's processed until it generates machine code. If we think back to the program abstraction hierarchy from before, the assembler is what links the next level in the development chain. It's what allows us to combine the relatively tiny microprograms in the microcode to build more complex and advanced programs. This is why the theory behind computer organization is important. The goal as we move up this chain is to remove the amount of busy work needed to do things. If we're writing an assembly program, we don't necessarily care about how addition works at the hardware level. We just need to add numbers reliably. Fortunately, once the microcode is complete, we won't have to worry about that anymore. And this continues farther up the hierarchy, where groups of assembly code form the functions of a high-level language like C, for example. I'll put the link to the assembler down in the description of this video, but for the rest of this video, we'll focus on actually writing a program for the computer in assembly. So let's make a new program, assemble it, and run it on the simulation of our computer. In the directory with the assembler, create a new ASM file named test.asm. Let's start by making an extremely simple program. This program adds two numbers together, stores them in the X register, and then halts execution. First, every program needs to start with what's called a starting vector or a starting address. This is the address where the program will be placed in memory. It's important that this exists, because the pointers that are calculated are based on this address. Because we're just going to place this in the program ROM of the computer, we can just set this to 0. Enter in the @ sign, a space, and the number 0. This means that the program will assume that it's been placed at address 0 in memory. Now, if we tried to place this program in a different location than the start vector, the program won't work properly. Now, a few lines down from that, we'll start writing the actual program. First, we load our first number to add, and let's just say it's 5. We use the LDA opcode, and then write $5. This is exactly the same as 6502 assembly. The hash mark means that the value is immediate, meaning that it's included along with the instruction in memory. If this was our program in memory, this would be the opcode value, and this would be the immediate value of 5, followed by the next instruction. The $sign tells the assembler that the number is a literal hexadecimal value, meaning that it's not a label. We'll come back to labels in a minute. For the next instruction, let's add 3 to the accumulator. We do this with the ADC opcode, which stands for add with carry. Again, this is a borrowed term from 6502 assembly. We then give that the argument $$3 to tell it to add the immediate hex value 3. After this, the accumulator register will hold the value 8. To transfer that value to the X register, we use the TAX opcode, which stands for transfer accumulator to X. Finally, we halt execution. But the thing is, there isn't really a way to do that in hardware. The computer has no hardware ability to control its own clock source or freeze its program flow. Yet there is an opcode we can use. It's the halt instruction. The thing is, this opcode doesn't exist. In fact, if you look through the JSON file from the microcode assembler, there is no halt instruction. So where did this opcode come from? This is actually a feature of the assembler. Halt is a virtual opcode, which is similar to a macro, meaning that it's created entirely within the assembler. And there are a handful of virtual opcodes. For example, in hardware, there's no way to jump if the carry flag isn't set, also known as a jump carry clear or jump less than. There's also no jump not equals. Yet the assembler supports all of those. Inside the assembler, there's a routine to interpret virtual opcodes, which takes them and replaces them with logical equivalents using real opcodes. For example, the halt instruction is replaced by an unconditional jump that jumps to itself, effectively trapping the computer in an infinite loop. Jump not equals starts by doing a jump equals with a second unconditional jump directly after it. If the value in the ALU hold register is 0, the jump equals instruction bypasses this unconditional jump. So this unconditional jump here can only execute if the value in the ALU hold register isn't 0, which is logically the same as doing a jump not equals. This is also how jump carry clear works. Anyways, going back to the program we've been writing, we're all done. So let's assemble it and run it on the simulator. With the terminal window open, execute the assemble.py program with the N and X option, and then the name of the assembly file. The X option will output hexadecimal code to the terminal, and the N option prevents the assembler from writing a binary file. This is okay though, because we're just going to copy paste the hex values and paste them into the program ROM of our computer directly. Run the command, and you'll see the output on the terminal. What we can do is select and copy the hex values from the terminal, go to the simulator, right-click on the program ROM, click Edit, and then paste the values into the ROM. Note that in order for this to work, you need to make sure your assembler is configured with the same version of the microcode that the computer is using. I'd like to come up with some way to make it easier to verify that the versions of the microcode in the computer and the JSON file match. But for the time being, if you aren't sure if there's a version mismatch, it's best to run the microcode assembler again, upload the ROM image to the computer, and put the JSON file in the assembler. Once our program is in the program ROM, we can use the finger tool to step the clock and watch what happens. You should see the value 5 loaded into the accumulator, which is then added by 3, and then the result of 8 is stored in the accumulator. Next, the value 8 should transfer to the X register. Then the program should enter into an infinite loop. Since this video is getting a little long, let's pick it up in the next video, where we can look at more advanced programming for this computer. And what would be nice is to have some kind of output in place to print values. So in the next video, we'll add in a simple text output for the computer, create a print string routine, and then output text like hello world.